Hello and welcome. We are so excited to welcome you to Living Cities Earth experience. Please enjoy the next few minutes, and we hope that this video and the ideas from our speakers will change your life to the better. Listen carefully. What particularly talks to you? What might have a chance to change your life and lives of people around you? Also, life of your place and our planet. We believe that you, the leaders of positive change, are those who define the future. So let's work together. And thank you for coming. Well, wonderful. Guy, you were starting the video, and Pooran was one of the first ones. So let me pass it on to you. Guy Eames, one of the most active people in the field of green construction, green building, green economy. Guy, the word is yours.
Liv, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be with everybody today, and it's a wonderful program which we're organizing. Today's or my session, which I'm going to be introducing, is introducing one of the best tools available for integrating and organizing sustainability. As we all know, sustainability is a very complex.
Oh, Guy, you're on mute. You are on mute.
Right, I'm sorry about that. Yes, to be able to organize it, it's best to use tools. I would like to introduce the next speaker, who I've known for many years, Pooran Desai, who's going to be also presenting together with his colleague Peter Anderson. Pooran is one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. He's an environmentalist. He's been working in sustainability for over 3 decades. And in 1994, he co-founded one of the world's first sustainability organizations, Bioregional. And he is personally, as far as I'm concerned, one of the people on this planet who's done the most to bring together a joined up, so joining up all the dots system for sustainability. Pooran, you're here with us. Can you hear us?
Yes, thanks, Guy. Thanks for that very generous introduction.
Absolutely, you're one of the most modest people as well, Pooran. That's another one of your qualities. Yeah. If I could hand over basically the floor to you, if you'd like to also tell us about your system, this One Planet Living, and the platform, how it came about, and how our listeners and those out there can use it to create their strategies and to change the world.
Okay, great, thanks, Guy. If I may share screens, it's easier for me to actually explain what we're doing by sharing screens. So I will share. Are people able to see that now? Yeah. Good.
Yes, we can see that. Yes.
Brilliant, thank you. So I sort of explained this system that we've created, this digital platform that we've created in the context of the new reality which we find ourselves in, that new reality is going to require a new way of thinking, and that new way of thinking can actually be supported or even encouraged or developed by giving us, by having new tools to use that. And for me, it's now at the very core all about joining the dots. So it's not quite moving now. But it's a platform which is we've been developing for over 6 years now, and it's just over the last year been starting to get traction. It's taken us a long time to perfect it. It uses very different database technology from the databases which most people are using to organize their data. But we now have local governments around the UK starting to use it, our councils, local councils. We've just started a pilot with a national park here, which is quite a large area in the southeast of England, the South Downs National Park. But we've also got community groups using it to map what they're doing locally. And for me, the core of this, I've been working in sustainability for over 30 years. And I think if I were to distill it down into its essence, sustainability, or in fact creating a regenerative future, is all about understanding that everything is interconnected. So, for example, what we build determines how much we use our cars. If those cars are internal combustion engine cars, they're creating pollutants which are damaging our health. It's contributing to climate change, supporting the oil industry, which also creates single-use plastics, which are ending up in the oceans, filling our fish up with plastics. If we choose to eat those fish, we're filling ourselves up with microplastics. And in fact, all of us are now full of microplastics. And in fact, it seems to be now the latest evidence is that every cell in our body has microplastics in it. And that is starting to impact our health. So there's a fear that that's contributing to chronic inflammation, which underpins almost all disease. But those plastics are also killing penguins on the other side of the world. So everything is interconnected. Our health, the environment, the economy, jobs, biodiversity, how we design our cities or the places where we live, it's all interconnected. But we don't have the tools to visualize or manage those connections. So it is built on quite a long history of working in sustainability. As Guy said, in the 1990s, I co-founded an environmental organization with colleagues, set up a number of enterprises in sustainable forestry, organic farming, recycling. We needed new offices. We ended up building the UK's first zero carbon urban village called Bedzed in South London, which was 100 homes and office and community space. I lived there for 18 years and worked there for 18 years. And soon after moving in, started to get that feel for this community, what it was about, how we were linking together technologies with ways of living and behavior change. And to help spread that idea, I coined the term One Planet Living. How can we lead happy, healthy lives within the environmental limits or the planetary boundaries of our one planet? And led a process to identify 10 very simple, intuitive sustainability principles to back that up, and then raised more money, did more real estate development, but also worked around the world, leading the One Planet Living initiative, working with retailers, big retailers like B&Q in the UK, which is our largest home improvement store, on their One Planet Home strategy, but also manufacturing companies and cities and real estate developments in actually over 30 countries, everything from tiny homes in Australia to New Quarter of City in the Middle East, to the extension to Disneyland Paris, to landscape scale conservation and development projects in Africa. So a lot of experience from that. We also wrote the sustainability strategy for the London 2012 Olympics called the One Planet Games. And I can't take credit for this, but my colleagues held the first workshop at the United Nations in 2011 in partnership with the Colombian government, bringing together our One Planet Living partners, but to propose what became the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm very proud actually that the framework I created is the basis of the UN SDGs. But of course, the new reality now is that we are crossing climate tipping points, and we're getting very clear signals of that over the last couple of years. So we are going to have to transform incredibly rapidly. I don't think we've got decades left to sort this out. It is an emergency. Because I've been in the space for a long time, been talking, I had private conversations with some of the leading scientists. Some of them are saying things like, we're not expecting the majority of humanity to make it through the next 20 to 30 years. So we are going to, if we are going to continue on this planet, at least in a civilized way, we're going to have to transform incredibly rapidly. And how can we do that? We will need new thinking. So the sorts of thinking that we've got currently, I think, is very siloed thinking. We're tearing our hair out trying to solve issues. So whoever shouts loudest this month gets a policy or a strategy, if I'm not being too rude, to keep them quiet. If it's the cost of living crisis with inflation, if it's refugees, if it's a climate emergency, if it's crime, we put in place a policy or a strategy or a plan or even part of an ESG strategy, but does it all join up? And dealing with the parts does not mean you get a coherent, joined up living system which promotes health and well-being. So instead of that, can we get out of that detail, get out of that siloed mentality, get out of that reductionist mindset, and actually think about, okay, what are the outcomes we want to achieve? What are the shared outcomes? What are those outcomes we share? How do they fit together? And then how can we collaborate across traditional silos of departments, organizations, or even sectors to achieve these shared outcomes? So collaborate in ecosystems on shared outcomes. And that's this whole systems thinking, of course, which so many people talk about, but it's very hard to teach people systems thinking. And when I see people trying to teach systems thinking, actually it becomes very, very abstract and almost impossible for ordinary people to understand. So I love this quote from Buckminster Fuller, who says, if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them the tool, the use of which will lead to new ways of thinking. And so that's what we're starting to see with the platform we've created. And it's really, at its core, ultra simple. So we can take any policy, strategy, or plan, break it down into its atomic structure, as we like to call it, or its building blocks of outcomes, what you want to achieve, actions, how you're going to achieve them, indicators, what you might track. You can then play around with it, link it up, see how coherent it is, internally modify it as you need to make it more coherent. But then because we can do that for any policy, strategy, plan, or project, we can connect any number of these together from any number of different departments, any number of organizations, any number of sectors, so that seeing those plans, how they fit together, enables all those different stakeholders to collaborate, see where the synergies are, see where the conflicts are, but really start working together as an ecosystem where, in fact, they become very powerful in that ecosystem by contributing to the most shared outcomes in that ecosystem. And that mind map is great. I believe it is using our right hemisphere of our brains, which is underdeveloped in our culture. But then in order to implement this, you might want something which is more linear, which more fits in with the way the left hemisphere of our brains work. And so it automatically converts it into something like a list or a table, so you can manage and implement projects more effectively. We can also create document reports across the whole of the ecosystem. So not just organizational, but say around shared outcomes. So see how everyone is contributing to shared outcomes and in fact share it online as well. And because we use these different database technologies, everyone sees the world in a different way. Everyone has their own way of viewing sustainability. And that makes it very difficult for people to communicate with each other. But in our platform, we have this lenses functionality. And at the click of a button, we can just switch lenses. And so everyone can see how the different plans or strategies fit together through the lens that they're used to viewing the world, and switch it to someone else's lens, when they're looking at it, so that everyone can collaborate in that way. And as well as local governments using it, real estate developers using it, we've also now got community groups using it to map what they can do locally. And we're now also linking those conceptual maps, those mind maps, to geographic maps. So we're very excited. Still early days. It's been a long, hard slog to get here, but we're really excited by the next year. And we want to find more people who want to partner with us to make this a reality. So that's it.
Pooran, thank you very much for that wonderful, very inspiring, very short but concise presentation. I understand that your colleague Peter is also with us, who's going to tell us a little bit about how communities can use the tool and possible strategies for the future. Is that right?
That is right.
Oh, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, thanks, Pooran, Guy. So I was just going to speak to the top and the bottom, really. I was going to speak a little bit to the vision and where we're headed, and then a little bit more about the practical route map of how we plan to get there. Got a couple of slides I can hopefully share as well. See how that works out. See my screen okay? Yeah, tidy. So the vision, as I've spoken to a few of you about, and I understand it from the Living Cities organization, is to work with around 10,000 cities and to try to capture the best projects that already exist on the planet and to support the replication or the adaptation and replication of those projects across the world. And that's the vision that we've had as well. And I think the challenge there is, what is the practical route map to make that happen? We know we've got awesome solutions out there, whether that's to do with food or to do with energy or materials or whatever it is. But the question is, how are we going to scale those across the planet? We clearly need to move away from silo working and into collaborative working. And the way I like to see those solutions is almost like DNA for a healthy planet. And so the DNA of our own bodies are there to keep us healthy. And these projects that we all know about are the DNA for a healthy planet. And it's really important that we consolidate those and we create a mechanism for their replication. So we also obviously need to move towards coordinated collective action. So rather than just pockets of action happening in certain areas with amazing inspirational case studies, that action needs to be spread so that hundreds, if not thousands of people are adapting those templates and implementing them across the world. And obviously AI would have a place in that. And I think AI is a good topic. Obviously, it's very zeitgeist at the moment. And if you think about how AI has been adopted over the last few months, I mean, it was literally weeks from its release with ChatGPT, for instance, to the point where people were starting to work in new ways. And I think that's the challenge that's ahead of us. It's not really so much of coming up with concepts or written documents or websites or new groups, but it's actually, as Pooran pointed to in the Buckminster Fuller quote there, we generally have to create a tool that has that way from engagement through to. So just to speak then in a little bit more detail on that, some simple slides here. So the basis of that journey I see as being starting with strategic mapping, as Pooran's already done, is what he's been working on for 6 years. It's like, what do we want to do? What do we want to achieve? How are we going to achieve it? And how are we going to measure that? And if we can map those strategic plans across an organization, across a range of partners in an area, or across, say, a network of organizations, say the 450 local authorities in the United Kingdom who have all developed climate emergency action plans, you can imagine how similar they must be, then we can start to then identify what the core components of those and the opportunities for collaboration might be. The next stage, once people have gone through that strategic mapping process, tends to be, what assets have we got to be able to work with? And most people want to do mapping of one kind or another. And that's something that is being developed in the One platform at the moment, but there are obviously lots of mapping tools out there. The question then is, once you've started looking at the resources, then to look at data. There's a lot of data on the air quality, soil quality, water quality, obviously carbon footprint, health, well-being indexes, this sort of stuff. This really gives us an insight as to the health of our communities. And if we've already done the work of consolidating solutions, let's say working with the partners that you all know and consolidating those solutions as templates, then using AI, we can look at the health of a community, and the AI can then suggest the most relevant solutions from their DNA. So that's really the route map in the short term. And then obviously we need to create a citizens app where the route map essentially for engagement is, I open up the app, I see the health of my community, I'm sort of horrified by the health of the soil and the air and the water. I tell the app, select an area I'm interested in, and then it starts making recommendations of projects I could engage with. And that then leads to a Zoom call, and on that Zoom call, I'm then connected up to people who have also opted into that template across the country, and not just people in my local area. And in that way, we're moving from silo working through to coordinated collective action around proven positive impact. So hopefully that gives you some idea. In terms of how we're looking to scale, we've developed a partnership program for a range of different organizational stakeholder types, all the way from community groups who we're actually offering everything for free to, so that they can become experts in the platform and the technology. They can create ecosystems of action plans in the local area for free with our support. And then we will support them to demonstrate this technology as a new way of working to the larger stakeholders in the area, so to the local authorities, the health boards, the universities. So we really actually see that empowerment model of engaging local communities is really exciting in a sense, because they're going to become the experts and they're going to co-develop the functions and features and services that are going to need to make this transition happen. So that's probably enough for now. I don't know, Pooran, whether you want to chip in with anything else on there.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's good, Peter. And we are looking for, we do have a community partnership program, and we're also starting to work with consultants as well who want to use the platform to start implementing it with cities and local governments. So yeah, we're very happy to talk to people about that.
Or maybe I could ask you about the sort of the scalability. We're really talking about digitalization here of sustainability, right? Which is something relatively new. If all of us have been using word processors for the last 20, 30 years, and emails and sending each other text messages for at least a decade, as far as I know, at least in every day for sustainability consultants, this is something relatively new. When did the tool come out, and where do you see it maybe in 5 years' time?
Yeah, so we started building it 6 years ago. It's taken time. It's very simple in the end. It sometimes takes a long time to get to something simple, to really get to the heart of it. Over the last year, we've really been applying it in earnest, with local governments starting to subscribe to our system, so they're and starting now to renew as well. So, and starting to expand it through their organizations. We're adding extra functionality, of course, based on feedback from our partners, from community groups, from the local governments. Yeah, and so I think by we're also opening up what's known as an API layer, so we can integrate with other systems as well. So come September this year, we'll be looking at what we're calling our global launch of it, to really start expanding its use rapidly and unlocking that potential. And I really do believe we won't solve the problems using the parts of the brain that we generally use with the tools we've got, with things like Excel, Word documents. They're all very linear PDFs. We actually need to use a different part of our brain, the right hemisphere, which can see interconnect and see the big picture. And in fact, a lot of philosophers, psychiatrists are saying we're now in a sick culture because we have overdeveloped the left hemisphere, the left part of our brain has become so dominant, but it can't see the big picture. And we have to rebalance that. And the right hemisphere must always be the master. That it is, you must be able to see the big picture first before you focus on the detail, which is what the left hemisphere does. So my own background's in neuroscience actually, so I'm very interested in this, but the way we perceive reality is very different with the different parts of our brains. And in fact, that's why we won't solve these complex interconnected problems by looking at things in silos and focusing in on the detail before seeing the big picture.
Mm-hmm. This idea of bringing everything together, joining the dots, is so important, because and the silo mentality that you're talking about, because we see that problem so often. One of the things which I really love about your tool is the fact that it has these various goals, like health and happiness is the first one, or what's the exact name? These wonderful titles.
Yeah, guys. So actually, people can put in their own shared outcomes, and I think Lev wants to ask a question, but people can put in their own shared outcomes. But we've also created these global shared outcomes, so that actually, when you want to connect, when you want to connect ecosystems together, we can have actually a set of the 10.1 based on the 10.1 Planet Living principles, these global shared outcomes, so that we can see how we're ultimately contributing to one sustainable planet. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to try and go to Mars, but we may not need to go there, as we're turning Earth into Mars at the moment.
Lev, what's your question? Would you like to come in with your question?
Yes, I would love to. We have 4 minutes left, but actually, in a way, we already started our next session, which is exactly about how do we cooperate different organizations to create those systemic changes on a global scale. And Pooran and Peter, thank you very much. The presentation you gave, as Marilyn wrote, is both sort of strategic and systemic and conceptual, and it really talks about very important things like engaging all of our, two of our hemispheres in an equal manner, etc., etc. But it's also very functional and practical, right? So when you come to local managers, they unfortunately don't have much bandwidth to think in terms of overall planet, etc. They want some workable solutions now in their budget, etc. So number one, what I wanted to share is that it's pleasure to know you. And I remember when Guy and myself, we came to visit Pooran in Brighton in the United Kingdom. For me, it was really a special experience because you meet people who share light, right? They work in different sort of areas, but Pooran is such an amazing individual. And so thank you that you combine those, I call it sky and the earth, sort of the big ideas and the very practical approach. And Peter, I also see that you bring a lot of very specific competences in how to manage basically the whole implementation process, right? So one small question. I understand that the bandwidth, the resources of any team are always limited. So your focus in the next year or so, of course, will be mostly on specific cases which basically have budgets to implement the system. So that's one thing. From your perspective, what efforts do we need to make potentially together to really bring it to the larger scale? And I will share just one insight which came to my mind. I'm right now nearby Seattle, and there is a Bill Gates Foundation here. And one of my friends works as he's a speechwriter on the global climate sort of issues. And if you know Bill Gates, he is sort of one of the richest people in the world. And what she told me is that he decided, and he publicly announced it, that he wants to spend most of his, whatever, 100 billion plus fortune on different social type initiatives while he's alive. So not to pass it on to the heirs, but to spend them on the initiatives in the next, 10, 15, 20 years. And the problem that he has, he selected right now two. So one was fighting the malaria and some other diseases in Africa, because he found that there are specific ways to really solve the issue. And they worked with it for 10, 15 years, and they actually solved it to a large degree. The second one he found is the global climate. So he's sort of driving this agenda in the best way possible from his perspective. And he's looking for other large-scale initiatives where he could engage with his, connections and money, etc. And according to them, it's difficult to find them. Of course, what we are talking about here is not maybe the complete solution, but how can we build some sort of a global initiative? We should have the technological platform, managerial sort of solutions, and many other things. And then we could come to, not necessarily to him personally, but to people like him and institutions, foundations, who would give us the energy, financial energy, making decisions, etc., to drive those large-scale implementations. That's just a wild idea, but maybe you have some thoughts to share. And we're already in the next section, so we are talking about how to, create thousands of happy cities. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lev. And we just very briefly on that, what we want to do is join up these solutions, but also enable those solutions to be modified to fit the context. So we'd love to explore more on another call, but we're also starting to provide the platform free to community groups to start mapping what they're doing locally, but then to take it to their local government and to get them subscribing to it to use across the local government as well. And we want to always share that revenue with the community group so that they can be rewarded for the work they do in joining the dots. So we're we want to explore that. We've got a number of different partnerships going in the UK now, but we may be able to explore that more globally as well. So very happy to explore that with anyone who wants to. I can see more questions, but I think that might have to wait for another time. And we're very happy, Pete, and some of my other colleagues, to spend as much time as people want in exploring the ways we might really scale this as a grassroots up sort of process.
Lev, am I right in thinking we can give both Peter and Pooran some time in this next session? Is that right? Just so that they know what the time limits are.
Of course, we just to quickly announce, because we are 1 minute into the next session, but we invited Pooran to join it as well, because we will be talking, maybe Alexander will also share, we are the co-facilitators here. The whole idea was to bring together luminaries with practical practical projects and who also want to work on a global scale and do so for many years. I see that Tim has joined. Hello, Tim, and Sandy, and Annaluz has joined, and other people are joining. So maybe I pass it on to Alexander. He quickly introduces what we are going to spend next hour talking about, and then we'll move around the circle and think how to do it all together. Wow, you have made it. You just watched amazing insights from experts of Living Cities Earth ecosystem. We welcome you to the Living Cities Earth experience and hope that we are going for a long ride as we take care of ourselves, our communities, our cities, and our planet. Thank you and welcome.